The glare from my laptop screen burned my tired eyes as I sat at my desk, staring at the medical bill in my inbox. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, frozen in place, while my mind scrambled to process what I was seeing. Sophie, my wife, had given birth 3 days ago, right in the middle of my business trip to Chicago. The email had arrived this morning, carrying news that should have been the happiest of my life. A baby. Our baby. For years, I had imagined this moment, picturing the family we would build together. I had dreamed of coming home to sweet laughter, tiny hands reaching for mine, a life filled with warmth and love. And yet, as I sat there, staring at the screen, something cold and heavy settled in my chest. It wasn't joy that filled me, it was doubt. A quiet, insistent unease that I couldn't shake. For months, something had been off between Sophie and me. It had started subtly, so much so that I had convinced myself I was imagining things. She stopped meeting my eyes at dinner, her responses growing short and clipped, her warmth slowly fading. When I reached for her at night, she pulled away, murmuring excuses. She was tired, she wasn't feeling well. I had told myself it was just pregnancy, the exhaustion, the hormones. That's what everyone said, wasn't it? But deep down, I had known it was more than that. She stopped talking about the future, too. The house we had planned to buy one day, the trips we had dreamed of taking once the baby was older. All those conversations disappeared, like dried petals falling from a wilting flower. It was as if she had checked out of our marriage, and I had been too busy or too blind to acknowledge it. And then there was Eric, my younger brother, the golden boy. Charming, effortlessly likable, the kind of man who could breeze through life while I worked myself to the bone just to stay afloat. I had envied him at times, resented the way everything seemed to come so easily to him. But lately, my feelings toward him had shifted into something darker, something uneasy. He had been around too much. I would come home from work and find him sprawled on our couch, laughing, relaxed, his arm draped casually over the backrest, just a little too close to Sophie's shoulders. And Sophie, she would light up at his jokes, laughing in a way she hadn't laughed with me in months. I had told myself it was nothing. Eric was family. Sophie was lonely. I was gone too often. But now, staring at that hospital bill, the pieces were rearranging themselves into a picture I didn't want to see. My hands clenched into fists. I smacked my face with both palms, as if I could shake the thoughts loose, force them out of my skull. None of this mattered now. I had a child, a tiny, helpless baby girl. A daughter I had yet to meet, because Sophie hadn't even called when it happened. No excited phone call, no breathless message telling me to rush home. Just a short, clinical email. Sure, the baby's here. We're fine. That was it. No joy, no details, no come home. That should have been the first red flag. But I had been buried in meetings, too distracted to grasp the cold detachment in her words. Now, though, it hit me with the force of a wrecking ball. I grabbed my coat from the back of my chair, the worn leather creaking as I yanked it on. Whatever was happening, whatever these gnawing doubts were whispering to me, I had to see them. Sophie, the baby, my family. I could figure out the rest later. The drive to the hospital blurred past, my knuckles white against the steering wheel, my thoughts a relentless storm of questions I didn't want to ask. Was the baby okay? Was Sophie okay? Was there something she wasn't telling me? The hospital loomed ahead, a cold, gray block against the dusky sky. I pulled into the parking lot too fast, barely remembering to lock the car before shoving my hands deep into my coat pockets. The night air was sharp, slicing through my clothes, but I barely felt it as I strode toward the entrance. The receptionist barely looked up as she gave me Sophie's room number, her voice dull and uninterested. The elevator ride felt endless, its hum vibrating through my bones, doing nothing to quiet the storm raging inside me. I told myself I was overreacting. Marriages go through rough patches. Babies change everything. Eric was just Eric, obnoxious but ultimately harmless. By the time I stepped into the hallway, I had almost convinced myself that everything was fine. Almost. The corridor smelled of bleach and antiseptic, the sharp scent clinging to the sterile white walls. My sneakers squeaked against the polished floor as I approached the room. Room 312. That's where she was. That's where my new life was waiting. I straightened my coat, squared my shoulders, and forced a smile. I was a father now. That was what mattered. But as I stepped closer to the hospital room, something made me stop. A sound, low but distinct, drifted through the half-open door. Voices. Familiar ones. My gut twisted. Slowing my steps, I strained to listen, my heartbeat pounding louder with each inch I moved forward. I didn't know it yet, but what I was about to hear would unravel everything I thought I knew. This wasn't just a bill anymore. It wasn't just a lingering suspicion. This was the beginning of the end. "He's gorgeous," I said softly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Sophie reached out, her fingers brushing my arm in a touch that once would have felt like home. "He is, isn't he?" she murmured, her voice warm. "We did fine." "We?" The word lodged itself in my throat like a stone. But I nodded, forcing myself to play along. "Yeah, we did." I didn't look at Eric. Didn't want to see his reaction, his expression, anything that would confirm what I was starting to believe. Instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat and asked, "What's his name?" There was the slightest hesitation, a flicker of something unreadable in Sophie's eyes before she answered. "We were thinking Jacob." "Jacob. My father's name." I nodded slowly. "Jacob," I repeated. "I like it." Eric shifted beside me, leaning against the wall with an easy confidence that made my skin crawl. "You should have seen her, Tom," he said, his voice light, full of admiration. "She was a champ. Whole thing went easy." He sounded proud, like he had been a part of it, a significant part of it. I forced my teeth to unclench. "Wish I'd been here," I said, keeping my eyes on Sophie. She met my gaze, smiling like there was nothing unusual about any of this. "Work," she sighed. "You know how it is." Her hand squeezed my arm, her touch lingering. "It's okay. You're here now." Her warmth felt like a lie. But I let it stay there, let her believe she still had me under her thumb. I kept my voice steady, light, asking all the right questions. How she was feeling, when they'd be discharged, whether she needed anything. She answered just as casually, as if we were nothing more than a happy couple settling into our new life. But the longer I watched them, the harder it was to ignore the way they moved around each other. The ease, the familiarity, the silent, unspoken rhythm they shared. How long had this been going on? How many nights had I come home exhausted from work while they were here, laughing, whispering, living? Still, I kept my expression neutral. I nodded in all the right places, chuckled when Eric cracked a joke about diaper duty. And they bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. Sophie even relaxed into the bed, her head tilting back against the pillows as she talked about the nurses and how Jacob had wailed through the night. She smiled at me like nothing had changed, like I was still the fool she had counted on me to be. Eventually, I glanced at my phone, sighing. "I should go," I said, tucking it back into my pocket. Sophie pouted, tilting her head. "You just got here." I shrugged, offering her my best apologetic smile. "Work's calling. Got to keep the bills paid, right?" Eric laughed, reaching out to slap my shoulder. "That's our Tom. Always the responsible one." The moment his hand landed on me, I wanted to shrug it off, to wipe away the touch like it was something filthy. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled, meeting his gaze with a wink. "Someone's got to be," I said lightly. He grinned, oblivious. I leaned in, kissed Sophie on the forehead, told her I'd be back tomorrow. And then I walked out, my steps calm, measured, deliberate. The second I stepped into the hallway, my smile vanished. A long breath escaped me, my chest tightening in something dangerously close to rage. They thought they had won. They thought I was still their puppet, dancing on strings they controlled. But they were wrong, because I was the one pulling the strings now, and they would never see it coming. For weeks, I kept the act up. I played the devoted husband, slipping into the role like it was my second skin. Every morning, I kissed Sophie goodbye, reminded her to call if she needed anything for herself or Jacob, then left for work with a smile painted across my face. In the evenings, I came home bearing takeout, settling beside her on the couch as she told me about her day. I asked about the baby, whether she was getting enough rest, if she needed anything. She answered with that same pleasant tone, her body leaning into mine, as if nothing between us had changed. Jacob gurgled in his crib, oblivious to the quiet war brewing beneath our roof. And Eric still dropped by.